Hey folks, we are Alacrity Endurance. I'm Dr. Alex Harrison, and this is Michelle Howe, a registered dietitian, master of sports science, and competes at the pro level in cycling and triathlon. Today, we are going to review Honey Stinger Energy Chews. And like all of our product reviews, we purchased these because we want to provide you with an honest review.
So do you want to tell us what's in it? Because the first thing I would do is look at the nutrition facts and the ingredient list.
There's 39 grams of carbs per package. There's 65 mg of sodium and 45 mg of potassium per package. Sodium to potassium ratio is pretty good, but the absolute amount of sodium is only 65 mg, and 65 mg of sodium per package with 39 grams of carbs per package means you're only getting about 160 milligrams of sodium per 100 grams of carbs, and 160 mg of sodium is pretty limited if you're like really trying to fuel maximally. So if you're going to use these exclusively for your fueling, essentially you're at risk for hyponatremia.
Looking at the ingredient list, it looks like potassium citrate is the source of potassium in the product, but I'm not seeing sodium listed specifically anywhere in the ingredient list. It looks like the sodium that is in the product is actually just sodium from one of the other ingredients.
So the reason we look at where the sodium is coming from in a product is because if you have enough sodium in it and a lot of the sodium is coming from table salt or NaCl, you're likely to get GI distress. And if the product manufacturer can use something like sodium citrate, that can make it easier on your gut. So in this product, it actually doesn't matter if we check where the sodium is coming from or not, because there's so little sodium in it in the first place. Whether it comes from table salt or sodium citrate or sodium alginate, it doesn't really matter. It's only in products that have higher sodium that you really have to be careful where you're getting your sodium from, and that's when sodium citrate becomes a lot easier on your gut than NaCl. But in this one, it doesn't really matter. What does matter though is if you drink enough water to have a high carb fueling experience with this product, you're very likely to get hyponatremic.
The ratio of sodium to carbs doesn't actually matter.
That's a great point. So the next thing that I typically look for is I like to figure out what the carb ratio is going to be if I'm using this product exclusively, because that glucose-fructose ratio is a really big determining factor in gut tolerance when you start fueling with more than like 60 grams of carbs per hour, and especially if you push up near 100 grams of carbs per hour.
So it looks like the first ingredient is tapioca syrup,
Which is
mostly glucose. The next ingredient is sugar, or just sucrose, which is one fructose and one glucose molecule stuck together. The next one is honey,
which is essentially close to a 50-50 ratio of glucose and fructose, but only 70% of honey is made up of glucose and fructose, which means there's 30% other stuff in it. So for the sake of simplicity, we can just call it a 50-50 split.
When you are looking at a supplement and trying to figure out what the carb sources are, looking at the top 3 ingredients is probably sufficient to figure out what ratios of carbs you're getting.
For this one, you have a primarily glucose source in tapioca syrup, and then 2 basically 50-50 splits between glucose and fructose. The carb ratio for Honey Stinger Chews is honestly pretty good. It probably falls somewhere between 2-to-1 and 1-to-1 glucose to fructose, which is pretty optimal. So the next question I always ask, or I always consider when I'm selecting a carbohydrate product, is how quickly can I get this down, and how much of an interruption to my training is it going to be? One of the things we're going to do in all of our product reviews is real-world testing of consuming this in training and letting you know how the experience goes, both from a taste perspective and just a logistics perspective of how easy it is to eat these while you're training or while you're racing.
If I was cycling and I had this in my back pocket, I think it would probably be easier to either be able to ride comfortably no-handed on the bike or just be ready to rip the package open with your teeth, because there's no way you're going to be able to open this with one hand, that's for sure.
So we did a test and mounted a GoPro to the back of Michelle's mountain bike and filmed me trying to eat these on the move.
So tell us about your experience consuming these while at Threshold the other day on the bike.
Honestly, they taste great. They're pretty easy to swallow. Chewing, a little bit more challenging. They sort of get stuck in your teeth. If you're out on an easy ride, it'd be a piece of cake. But when you're at Threshold, it gets hard to breathe because you're like navigating, keeping them in your mouth and getting them out of your teeth and then chasing them down with water, not to mention getting them out of the bag. So there are some challenges. It makes breathing a little bit harder. Thankfully, they're easier to swallow than some like sticky gels, but for ease of consumption during training, I would give it a 3 out of 10. I've had worse, but It's not easy. So out of all the endurance products that you've ever tasted, how would you rate the flavor of these?
During training, I would give it a solid 6.5 or 7. And in the middle of the night, I'd give it a 5.
Nice.
All right, and how did they taste? Did you even notice the taste when you're at threshold?
Yeah, honestly, they taste good. Even at threshold, they taste good. End of a ride, they taste good. Middle of the night, they taste good as a snack. I would give these like an 8 or a 9 in training, and probably an 8 or a 9 in the middle of the night too. I really like the taste of these.
Let's say I bought a bunch of these and I have them in my pantry and I want to use them during my training. What would you recommend?
First, I would say don't use them in your hard training because you will be potentially dropping them out of your mouth trying to breathe.
If you are spending $1.50 for 38 grams of carbs, that's roughly $1 for 25 grams of carbs. You're going to end up spending a lot of money on chews. So I don't know if we really necessarily need to buy any more of these.
Yeah, that's like $10 for a 2.5 hour activity, and that's going to add up fast.
Especially if you train a lot and train long.
So if you guys want to find out how we fuel our long training sessions, get subscribed to our channel and pay attention for our upcoming video on how we do it. But we need them to click the like button.
That's so cheesy, I hate it. And we're not doing a red arrow for this thumbnail either.
Make a funny face at the camera for the thumbnail.
No, right?
That's perfect. That's great. Yep. Awesome. Make a questionable face. Nice. That was good.
I'm pretty good at that.
Ladies and gentlemen, Michelle Howe. It's almost midnight. If you found this video helpful, share it with somebody who uses Honey Stinger products and give it a like. Hey folks, I forgot one thing. If you have a product you want to see us do a review on, post it in the comments.